Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Supervisor Dani Walsh, and welcome to the annual meeting of the United Homeowners. This is your fourth year, Dani,
Yes.
as supervisor. You've seen many of the many things in your first three budget years. You had home flooding, you had COVID issues, and other problems. Last year, you were able to get the animal shelter reactivated and the open house. Next week, the electronic and hazardous waste returns. Dani, what do you see happening in the rest of the year?
So this year we have a lot coming. Like you said, we had quite a bit that we went through. First of all, we also inherited a budget crisis. I'm sure everybody, it seems like forever ago, but that 2019 budget crisis that hit, there was nothing nefarious. I was, as well as others, concerned of how do we even get there. It was just poor business practices. It was people that were out of date and doing it the way it had always been done. And that worked really well up until the 90s. And then everything kind of kept getting away from us and nothing really changed. For example, we didn't even take online payments. We have snowbirds that couldn't even pay taxes from far away and had to trust the mail, which we know the mail system has changed now. We actually just got some votes in recently from the last election. So it's dangerous when you have something that important. So it wasn't that there was anything nefarious, it's that there were no fresh ideas. And it wasn't just from the board, it was that there was almost a stifling of change within departments.
Uh-huh.
And so each year, I started that first year with, if you were starting Bloomfield Township today, what would you do in your department differently? And some of these people created their departments, like our building and planning created that department 20 years ago. That's Patty Volker. She came from Birmingham. Even she said she'd make changes to something she created so long ago, as well as newer ones like Noah, who had worked his way up through the DPW and wasn't allowed to make changes until he was in that spot. So the first year's budget was about, let's change the departments, add some technology. We didn't have technology. You would be surprised at what we had. In fact, even something so simple as what Brian mentioned today, our new newsletter that comes out to you right now, it cost us more to send out the old one. But that was the way they used to do it. It looked like a newspaper, and that's what was done. And it cost us more, and it had less pages. So even sometimes making things newer and fresher actually was saving us money. This year's budget is focused on a lot of our larger projects, because what we did was we also did a study session to see what are the needs. There's been a lot of putting Band-Aids on things, even like OPEB. That was a Band-Aid. There was nothing illegal about what they were doing, but would you ever just pay the minimum on your credit card while the interest kept going up? No. Again, it didn't work. It wasn't illegal, it just didn't work. So the first couple years was to cut down the OPEB, which I inherited a 4% funding. You're supposed to be at 40%. It was us in the city of Inkster. We're kind of the bottom of the barrel. That's not usually a community you do want to mirror. So we have now gotten up to almost 30%. We will actually exceed the cutoff for us. We had until 2034 to get to 40%, and we should be there in just a couple years. So once we do that, it allows us to be more competitive too on, for example, the budget this year that's going towards police and fire. Some of the issues are we can't give retiree health care. We can't do, and they usually tend to retire at 50. It is a hard job on your body. It is hard to do 30 years of labor. If anybody has seen, you also mentioned the Oakland Hills podcast from the former supervisor. Listen to what those firefighters went through that day. It is unbelievable what it does to their bodies. So they do tend to, and the police officers that put themselves on the line every day, they tend to retire at 50, and they have no coverage till 65. So that kind of mentality of we don't have to worry about OPEB is actually hurting us with hiring right now. So with the firefighters, we were able to get them fully staffed in the last year's budget. This year, with some of the millage that we all agreed to, I know here, unlike some of the cities around us that privatize a lot, like I know Bloomfield Hills privatizes a lot of their items, and so does actually Birmingham uses us for a lot of their services. We as residents, I've lived here my whole life, 52 years, and we prioritize our safety usually with health, wellness, and safety. So the first section of that millage went towards, again, equipment and technology. Some of the things these men and women were using were not the best for their life either. So something as simple as gloves. We go to Fire 101. It's very cool. You get to be a firefighter for a day, but of course it's safe. They could turn the gas off anytime because it's propane. It's not real. But you feel what they're going through. You're in those hot rooms. You're covered. You're carrying all this. And it was raining. And this was shortly after the Oakland Hills fire, which also, if you remember, they had a lot of seasons that day. There was sun, there was rain, there was snow. There was so much that they dealt with. The gloves that you take off, you cannot put back on without help from others. Those were the gloves we were giving our men and women. Something so simple. There are other gloves that we ended up buying that they can slip them on and off even when they're wet. So something so small takes moments off of your life. When you think about if somebody's at your house with a fire and trying to get to you when they take their hands off, they got to put them back in before they can come back in. We also focused a lot on the technology needed for the fire, for the ambulances that come to save all of us. I know we actually had a trustee on the board that had a heart attack and he was saved. I've had friends that were saved by this newer equipment in the last couple years because, again, once you're over 50, heart attacks are real common in my friend's age right now. So these are the type of things that just 4 years ago, we didn't have some of this equipment. So I know some people say, well, why aren't you just hiring everybody? First, you have to fix their house before you invite people in. So, for example, women firefighters, we did not have anywhere for them to change. These buildings were made in the 70s when there weren't female firefighters. We didn't have any of those. I believe 2017 was the first year we ever hired a female. She had to go change in the men's bathroom and wait till they were all done. So even that's what I'm saying. How do you hire when you can't even hire half of the people that are out there? So first we fixed the fire. Now we're fixing the police. So we're looking at changing again for the dispatchers. We have the second largest dispatch compared to Oakland County. And we have people who are trying to come to us now. We just took on Franklin for their fire because the county raised the rates anywhere from 25 to 40% on fire 911. So we had approximately 10 communities reach out, but we can't hire any new dispatch because they tend to be women and our lockers are full. So again, we're not getting the best of the best right now if our facilities, so some of what we were doing first was the facilities. Then we started doing hiring. With the police, we did win an award, a national award actually, for our social media recruitment. We did come in second place to the International Association of Chiefs. So if you're going to lose to somebody, losing to the Chiefs isn't as bad.
No.
But we came in second. We were up against Los Angeles, New York, and that's that forward thinking of how do you recruit in today's world? They're not going to just show up on your doorstep because since 2020, we don't have a lot of people rushing to be police officers. The other thing that was holding us back is Bloomfield Township, again, it's just that the way it had always been done, required a bachelor's for a police officer. It is us, Michigan State Police, the City of Novi, and Wayne State University. Everybody else, including Birmingham, West Bloomfield, and everyone around us, requires an associate's and experience. So we have Birmingham firefighters begging to come here. We have, police officers. We had someone with 10 years of experience in the surrounding community that we can't even interview because he doesn't have a bachelor's. And so I asked for data. I said, so why are we doing this? Is it because it's the way it's always been done, which is always the answer I get. And I said, can you show me real data? Of the people who have graduated from the academy of the last 5 years, give me the top 10 and tell me how many had an actual degree. There was little to none. And for example, our top candidate this year, who wasn't in the top 10, but he was the top of those with a degree, he had a record. So are we really hiring the best if you're telling me I have to do it the way it was done? So having to fix all of these archaic policies has also slowed down a lot of the newer hires. So in addition to these 6 newer hires that we want for patrol, we do have 5 to 6 people who retire every year. So approximately 11 to 12 are being hired each year. So what we're doing right now is we've worked with, the one thing that's really nice too is we don't have the grievances that I inherited. I inherited a budget crisis. I inherited $1 million lawsuits on water. I inherited constant grievances from the 8 groups. And that was because there was a disconnect between there was no change allowed, there was no discussions, and now we have monthly and quarterly meetings with each of them. So there aren't any disputes because you actually talk, not just when it's negotiation time and not just when there's a problem. You talk and you figure things out. So with that, the big issue with them was they didn't like the idea of the bachelors anymore either, because they saw that we weren't getting the best of the best. They saw, because some of them actually teach at the academy, and they would go there and they would say, I can't even talk to the 5 best because none of them have a degree. So again, if we want the best of the best, we have to change with the times. So we did just start working on changing that policy. That should be the way we got firefighters, where they weren't allowed to have tattoos at all anywhere on their body. I don't know if you've seen these Gen Z and millennials, they love tattoos. So again, we weren't able to hire, and so the way I worked with people is, can we allow them if they're hidden? And the union said, what do you mean? I said, if your shirt comes to here and you have this typical military one, either there's like a typical one that they'll put here. Yeah. You can't see that in your uniform. So we worked together to say, we can take people with tattoos if it's not visible. If they do have it, they wear longer sleeves. That was working with the unions to figure out what we're going to do to go forward. So that's how we fixed fire last year. This year's focus in the budget has been police. The way they train is different. So these, again, I say kids, anyone under 50 is a kid. So they train differently. They train on video games. They train, if any of your grandkids or kids played SimCity or Minecraft, that's how you build a city. But they don't realize the jobs here are Minecraft. And then also with the way they play video games. They're all playing these games with guns and everything. But when you actually put them in a range, they're not familiar with that. So we bought a simulator that is a 360 simulator that treats them in that video game style. So you're adapting the way you are to the way of the world. And that was something that was not done here prior. So now we're starting to get younger kids who are interested, some of which have bachelors, but some that don't, that have said, if you do change this policy, I will be here tomorrow. And that actually has brought us some of the people from the surrounding areas as well. Because the culture that the men and women have created in the police and fire is amazing. Yeah. They truly are. And this is the one place where they get along. I didn't realize this, because growing up here, all the police and fire get along. But when I go to other communities, they are like this. And here we have men and women who have married from the police and fire. We have best friends. The chiefs grew up as friends up the ranks, because Jimmy used to call around and say, who's got the best food today? And that's how he would figure out which firehouse he'd go to. But it's basically the budgets of this year and the last year have been to changing the public safety to be able to recruit these newer people and retain. And the way we're retaining is through professional development, because we can't offer that retiree health care until I can get us completely out of the hole that was dug for me. Until I get out of that hole, the way I can do it is professional development. So we have started sending them to new things, like we weren't involved in SWAT. We weren't involved in the DEA. We weren't involved in any of the hit crimes. We weren't involved in a lot of these specialty things that others were helping us, like Troy. Troy is with the socket. You know, it's based out of Troy with the DEA. All of the training that they can get, as well as the money we take in for being involved on that, was going away. So now we have involvement, and our latest was we're applying again for SWAT, so that one of our officers would be on the Oakland County SWAT force when needed. That's something these kids really want to be, is they see TV. They see 911, they see Station 19, and that's what they want. Or sadly, they do quit and move on to another thing. They're not the same as, you know, Gen X and higher, where you stayed in a job, you stayed there for a while, so you have to constantly retain them with new things. So that's where a lot of the budget has gone this year for the police and fire millage. When it comes to technology and everything for the different departments, again, we kind of rethought some of them. And that's when these when it comes and we talk to health at the different HOAs, like, what are you worried about when people come to your house? It was, do I have the best equipment? So we figured that out. Then it was, what departments do you have the biggest bottlenecks at? building and planning being one of them. So about 3 years ago, I worked with other communities. We continued some shared services. We already have a contract with Kyle Wortman it's a consulting firm where whenever we have people out from retirement, we can now have them here while we fill spots. Because again, skilled trades, nobody's going into skilled trades. And that goes with what we're spending money on too, is recruiting kids to public service. So working with our federal and our state legislators to promote public service in that vein of SimCity is what I played. The younger kids play Minecraft. But you want to learn how to build a city, this is where you come to do the jobs in real life. So we're creating that recruiting form, which takes money to create these commercials. We did create an app, which took longer than expected thanks to CarPlay. I don't know if anyone's dealt with Apple or Facebook, but it is an abyss. It took over a year to get approved by Apple CarPlay, and you don't get any updates. You get 4-month updates. Still working on it. So it is now officially available. We haven't finished the beta testing, so you can all be the first to be on there to see the prototype that's up there. If you go to either Google Play or Apple onto the App Store and you look up the Bloomfield Township, there is now an app that we just got approval, but we haven't done the full beta testing. So please get on there, see what you think about it. If there's improvements you want to make, we're in the current development of making it better. So you're actually the first to learn about this because we just got approval about 2 weeks ago. We did a focus group here with some of the senior center, and we did a focus group with some of the parents at the schools.
Can you explain a little more what does the app do?
Sure, and there's 2 different apps. So this main app is the communications is one of the first things we changed. There wasn't much. It was, again, the quarterly newsletter and cable. Some of us, I haven't had cable for 15 years. Everything I do is streamed on apps or on Roku. So we did an app that is called the Bloomfield, I think it's just Bloomfield Township. Let me see here. And we also created the weekly e-news. If you're not on that, every Thursday we email out links and stories about what's happening in the township, not just with what we're doing, but with the community as a whole. Like there might be an event at Temple Bethel, they did a touch a truck, so we highlighted it, things like that. But if you go onto this app, this will be where you can go to see services. So there's 6 different boxes. Like Senior Center has it's one of our busiest areas, so it's got its own box. You can go there to see the catalog. We're working with the Point and Pay to see about actually letting you register online, because that is another connection where if you do it through Apple, they take 30% of your funds. So we're doing something that's called RSS, and it does a secondary host. So we would become the host, we would take in the money, and then it goes back to Apple. So the beauty of growing up with technology is finding the back doors to save some of the money. So right now you can see the actual catalog, but hopefully within a month or so you'll be able to even register online. If you're walking on the sidewalks and you see a downed tree or a downed wire, you can take a picture, send it through, it goes straight to that department, and they can get on it really quickly, so you can use photos. The cover of this Living in Bloomfield, we're going to be having photo contests, so again, you can submit pictures through here, you can submit stories. It does also give access to the stories that we have on our website, so for those who don't have cable, you can watch here all the different podcasts and all of the items
There
that
are
we're
copies over on the tables.
doing. Yeah, and this is the one where I'm saying just changing. To me, this looks a lot more improved, which is why I asked for it, but a lot more improved than our last one, and it's cheaper. Because the old one you had to fold over, they had to do it on a larger piece of paper all the way across. It was newspaper based, and there was one printer that still did it. This one we got to be able to bid out and find a better option, and we got 3 extra pages out of it. So this is, again, sometimes just looking at things that haven't been changed, you can get something better. Another thing with our budget this year is finally the strategic plan. Again, you kind of got to figure out where all your problems are before you can fix them. And we did have a lot of gaps in all of the different departments of, again, just kind of not growing with the times. So each department went through a change where we either created different silos, like in DPW, everybody worked in one spot, and then there was the building and grounds. Well, you said you should have water, sewer, building and grounds, this. So we now have 4 different divisions that can respond quicker so nobody's just kind of hanging out while the others are overworked. And that was consistent. We also had SADs are really taking off. We are all kind of in that spot where we realize as a township, we're not like a city. We don't pay the 18 mills that a Birmingham does, we pay 10. They have to collect a lot of money, or even Bloomfield Hills, somebody might mistakenly think that we take in money for that too. And what it is they pay taxes every single year to fix the roads. Not what we do, which is potholes, overlays, but to replace roads. They take in taxes to replace storm sewers. We don't own either of those. We don't take in that tax revenue. What we do is a road commission or road millage to help us work with RCOC on our neighborhood roads. And we are the only one in the state that has that recognition. I know Canton, they have a road department, but they're very limited in what they can do. We have an agreement with RCOC that we do all the maintenance of the neighborhood roads, potholes, plowing. That's why West Bloomfield, it took 8 days for their neighborhoods to get plowed in January, and ours were plowed that day. So it's what we control is the neighborhoods.
And a lot of the people who come to Bloomfield Township come from cities.
Yes.
The township is an entirely different unit of government. It was very early, goes back to 1827 for Bloomfield Township. Tell us what's different about townships versus cities.
So many things. Even growing up in a township, I realized, and with a background in business, I went back to school at 48 to get a double master's in public administration to get the new of what is all the different public acts. So it's called public acts. The biggest key difference is a city can do whatever they want. They can create their own rules. They have all the infrastructure. We can do what the state of Michigan tells us we're allowed to do. It has to be in the Michigan Constitution for us to do it. So for example, urban hunting. We are allowed to outlaw the gun hunting in Bloomfield Township. We cannot outlaw bow hunting. So urban hunting is becoming a real thing here because of all these large bucks that people are putting up on Facebook. Look what I caught. And so luckily, they can't just come on your property. They have to get permission. So if you can, as the president, so the way we can fight this as a township is tell your residents in your areas too, like what we're doing is, don't let them hunt on your property, and we won't have urban hunters. Whereas Birmingham or Bloomfield Hills can set a law that says no urban hunting with bows. Another, yeah?
So you can bow hunt in Bloomfield Township?
Any township. If a person allows you to be on their property in any township in Michigan, they can. The problem is anybody who knows much about hunting, they don't quickly die with a bow. Very rarely do they drop dead like they do in the movies. In fact, they run. We had one that went to a 6-year-old birthday party and died in that backyard. And this is a known hunter at Woodward and 16. His family owns that empty green space land so he can hunt. So unfortunately, they own it and they allow it. But the problem is the people behind are dealing with when it jumps over. So the way we've started to work with that is nobody allows him to come and get the deer. The DNR is called instead, and they remove the deer, and they're not allowed to have it. So the only way townships can, and that's why it gets frustrating when like someone from a city says, oh, just do this, because they don't know anything about townships, and they're different. Storm sewers. We can't go out and touch somebody else's infrastructure, and surprisingly, that's why we brought some of these. Most of them are privately owned by the HOAs, which a lot of us don't know until we have a problem. I live in the area down in the southwest, over by Wing Lake Road, not the fancy side, the other side, but we had 16 inches of rain in 2021. That area typically all season gets 8 inches. In 1 hour, we had 4 inches of rain that put Franklin and 14 Mile up to my waist. I have videos of me in the water up to my waist. My house is one of just many that got destroyed in the storms. It literally got lifted out of the ground when straight line winds came through in 21 because we had so much flooding in June that it was wet because all of that area is built to a 10-year storm. Those are not normal anymore. A 100-year storm is normal. That's why Oakland County requires 100-year storm now. But we did get 2 500-year storms in June and July. So when people are telling you it's never been this bad, they are absolutely correct. It has literally never been this bad with water. And the problem is a lot of that infrastructure is to 10 years, which that's not common anymore. 100-year and 500-year are starting. So when we started looking into how do we work with the county to fix this, that's when even we learned how much of it is HOA driven in my area, in your areas. And it's expensive because nobody was taking care of it for 50 years. When all these places were built, unless somebody passed down that knowledge, and we do have some that are lucky, they knew about it, they've been taking care of it. But a lot of this problem is that the storm sewers haven't been maintained by the private developments as opposed to the county. The county only owns along the right-of-way. So interior neighborhoods typically are private. So we've been working with SEMCOG, is the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments. They represent about 8 counties. Yeah?
Can you say that inside the neighborhood, the storm sewer system
Typically
is private?
Typically it is private.
Owned by who?
The HOA. So the neighbors, again, since we don't pay taxes like a city would on storm sewers, our HOA collects very little each year because we didn't know that we had to do it. But then you have somebody else who their HOA collects maybe $1,000 a year because they know the infrastructure they have to maintain. So if you're like me and your people are charging you $40 a year, odds are they don't know that they may maintain a storm sewer. And that's why we're sending out information to every single HOA. First, it'll kind of explain of like, yes, you're right. Storms are worse, and unfortunately, they're getting worse. They're not going to get better. So what we talk about is we give like who owns each. If it is the Water Resource Commission and not you, here's who you go to. If it is, we did find about 10 that we own from the 70s. Because again, there used to be a friends and family thing that happened. If you happen to know the supervisor back in those days, they might have taken on your infrastructure, which is obviously illegal. We are not allowed to use public dollars for private. So there are about 10, though, where we actually signed deeds. I say we, but I wasn't the one. It was in the 70s, where they signed off that they took on. And nobody here knew because that was not legal, what they did. So we found that out in 21 when these 10 areas had flooding, and we looked up to see. We try and help people, hey, who owns it in your area? You can call our engineering department. They will help you figure that out. You just tell them your HOA, they start looking at all the plans, they figure it out. We found out we owned about 10 of them, and 3 of them were so large that that's about $1.8 million worth of fixes for just those 3. Now, some of the smaller ones are easier, they're smaller, they're more drained. Most of the neighborhood ones aren't pipes. Most of the neighborhood ones, like in mine, are swales. Yeah. And the big problem is people are filling them in. So some of it's really easy. Tell your neighbors to quit filling in the areas where water gathers. There's a reason water gathers there. Yeah?
Well, the swales were controlled by this kind of road commission.
On the along the right of way. Yeah. But for example, I have one in my backyard between me and the other neighbor. So the ones in the neighborhoods, once you're off the right of way, it's us. And I had to explain to that person, you can't build that beautiful flower bed right there. She's like, well, I don't like all the water. I said, there's a reason that water goes there. It comes straight down the hill behind our houses, which is where we also have like the telephone poles and utility poles. That easement is not supposed to be built up, but people will put in grass, people will put in things. So the inside ones are not usually pipes, which is great, because that is a matter of just making people put them back to where they should. That's where our EESD, Engineering and Environment, will help you figure out where should your swales be and tell you which neighbors to work with.
I'm sure that we have a lot of questions in the audience. If you could identify yourself and your subdivision and give it to Dani, she'll see what.
So we're East River Farms #1 in
Okay.
Solid. This is shocking news, and we've kind of dealt with drainage issues forever. It's always been a runaround, whether that's the township, road commission,
Right.
or the drainage commissioner. And I have never heard before that the township will actually tell us.
Do you know why? Because nobody wants to give bad news. And that's what I've learned is I got that bad news because we were wondering why our place was flooding and no one's coming to save us. Another thing you'll learn, and this is again bad news that you need to give your people, hopefully you won't be hit like I was, make sure they have straight line wind riders on their homeowners. We had hundreds of us who've never heard of straight line winds. It used to be an F0 tornado. If they do not have that rider on their insurance, they will not be covered with an act of God. So I went from being out of debt had no debt before 50. That was always my goal. I bought that from my parents when my dad passed 20 years ago so my mother could age in place. I now have a brand new mortgage because not only was my house lifted out of the ground by trees that were 70 feet tall, that the roots lifted my house out of the ground and broke it, State Farm said straight line winds is not a true act of God. So straight line winds is the new version of F0 tornadoes. It came from Farmington Hills all the way up through Pontiac in 2021. And they were 50 to 70 mile an hour winds. They ripped up our sidewalks. They ripped up people's off of their house. They ripped some of us out of the ground, some just their roofs. Very few cover straight line winds. If you, so what I say is, make sure yours does. There are some that do. Some of, Chubb, I believe, does, and some of the others, but very few people were covered during those storms. So as a township, we're looking, because again, I'm thinking, why isn't the township helping? Let me look into this. And that's when you get through the runaround is, nobody wants to tell you that you own it. And that's why the county doesn't want to tell you because they don't want you mad. Previous politicians who are true politicians, not just local people who grew up here and want to help, they're not going to tell you the bad news. So it is not fun to give this information, but I'd rather give it now so you're not stuck, what I am, with a brand new mortgage at 52. It is not a pleasant place to be, let alone living in a construction zone.
Well, I mean, the way I view this, we really don't have a storm water system. We have we have a system which is patched together for road drainage and a little bit of stuff on top of it. But it's not a damn system. Now, I've heard rumors that there were various storage drain systems in the past which were dead. We inherited part of that, but I've never heard that we actually own.
Yeah, if you look at the deeds for your neighborhood, every single neighborhood has, when it got plotted, some are way back, so Judson Bradway's an old one, it will show you, and that's what we have to do. We do the legwork for you. We look up all the old register deeds. We look up to find out. There's one or two where it might be a county. Typically, well, sadly it is, we've had 2 lawsuits that someone in Wabeek sued West Bloomfield and us to say we owned it, but it's right there. It states that they do. But a lot of people used to sue I inherited so many, I can't even tell you how many lawsuits when I first came in. The biggest obviously being water and sewer. Nobody liked the rates, so they sued the township. It cost over $1 million to fight the falsehoods that are still being said at many of our meetings when there's one person in particular. That cost us as residents $1 million to fight that. So I also inherited some where people were suing based on storm drains. So I said, why aren't we settling this? And they said, we don't own it. So why aren't we telling them? I said, so that's the issue is, it was cheaper to fight it in court than to tell you the truth. And that's a difference, again, about people who want to go up to higher places and those of us that just want to stay local. I'm giving you the bad news so that you aren't stuck where I am, rebuilding your house. When all we had to do in my neighborhood was dig out some of these swales that never should have been filled in our backyards. So again, you're correct. Along the right-of-way, most of that is Water Resource Commission or Road Commission. One of the two along the right-of-way will own it. Once it goes into neighborhoods, it is, well, other than the 10 we found that we own, and that's also why you would want to reach out to the engineering, and it'll be in here, and you'll be getting a lot of these to hand out as well. We'll be doing mailings to all 200 of the HOAs. But the first step, reach out to my engineering department and ask them to help you figure out who owns it and where it's supposed to be. They'll actually show you the layout of, like on mine, it showed exactly where the water was supposed to flow. So that is, a development could not have been built without proving where the water goes. So every single one of your plotted areas, there's an answer. We just need you to reach out to us so we can help.
Brian, you had a question?
Get a quick question about the swales.
Identify yourself, please.
Oh, it's Brian Foley.
I'm Brian Foley from Glencoe Estates.
Yeah.
And we're south of Telegraph, east of Telegraph, south of Cork. And we have a street called Blandford that runs north and south. And there's a huge cottonwood blocking one of the swales. And my understanding was Oakland County said, you can't touch it, you can't cut it down. Is that their jurisdiction, or is that what you're saying, I have to go to the building department? It's on a residential road.
They're telling you that you can't cut down something in a right-of-way?
swale. It's just to the side of the road, so it's a ditch, if you will, and it's where the water runs, but it's totally blocked by a cottonwood that's about 2 feet in diameter.
What you can do is reach out, and some of these will be on there. If you reach out to our engineering department or even DPW, either one, they'll be an advocate for you with the county to say, hey, look, they've already told you this exists. You need to go out and fix it. Because what they're saying is don't do it, we're supposed to do it, but they're slow to get there. So that's where we can be an advocate for you, and we can get a claim number started. So whenever you do have trouble, that's what we're here for, to be your advocate with first we'll find out if it's the road commissioner or the water resource, who has the maintenance over that, and then we contact them and say, on behalf of this HOA, we need you to address this. And usually once that happens, it goes a little faster.
This is the engineering department?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, engineering, and if they're busy, they'll usually forward it to DPW because they're kind of going in tandem right now. Because as we give out this information, obviously more people are calling, and we want to get you answers. So they're being cross-trained, so that if engineering's unavailable, DPW will
Yes, the
help.
lady in the back.
Hello, Dani. I find this very interesting. I really, really
Who are, excuse me, who are you?
Glencoe Davis.
Glencoe?
I live in the estates.
Okay.
I'm the person with the tree.
Oh, okay.
The problem began when a new house went up on our street, which is a much higher elevation than mine. So my yard completely flooded, even over my driveway.
Okay.
The problem is the tree, though, because they dug out their culvert. I had a new culvert and a new end of the driveway. The water goes through now, but hits the tree, can't get round it because it's cottonwood with a very high ball, and the water turns back and comes back over the top of my driveway, which will degrade again now. I did what you suggested.
Bless you.
The township were helpful. They came out. They said they would advocate for me with Oakland County. I did get a call from Oakland County with a ticket number
Okay.
for my claim.
So
And the
have us
building
start
inspector-
checking on it.
The building inspector from Bloomfield Township said to me, good luck with this because there are 3 others in the township.
Can you tell me who said that to you? Because that's something that we need to change that person's customer service level. Can you share with me later who said that to you? Because that's a customer service level that we need to improve.
Say it publicly, but I can-
Right, that's what I mean. Go ahead and tell me later.
All right, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
No, but he was saying that Oakland County would not help me because he said that they had so many in the township that are not getting response from Oakland County.
And that's where they keep escalating. So first it starts where we get a ticket. Then if my team isn't getting any answers, I went to college with a lot of these. That's what helps when you grow up in this area. The Water Resource Commissioner, Jim Nash, but not only is he somebody that we work with, but these are people that I reach out to and say, hey, look, this has been too long. You need to fix this. And literally that kind of escalating it up, where first it starts with my team. They can get rid of probably 75% of your issues before they have to escalate it. But then that's my job, is to escalate it on your behalf.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm more or less giving up, but I'll
No, please don't. And that's something, if you ever do, if you ever do get that kind of customer service response, we're pretty lucky. We have 300 employees. I would venture to say 290 are amazing. But we do have some of that, the group that it's part of that old regime of, well, we're Bloomfield Township. This is the way it's always been done. And sadly, you just got it. This is the way it's always been done, and I need to continue to stop those. So,
We have a lady over here.
yeah.
Who are you?
My name is Yolanda, Brookside Hills Association.
Okay.
We currently have a SAG that has been worked on for years to replace roads in our subdivision. And we were told it's either township or it's don't do it. And that is because of the sewers in our town, in our roads, that they're so complex, et cetera. If we own them, why are we forced to only deal with you? Why can't we hire a contractor to come in and do, not a total renovation, but like a recapping?
Oh, you can absolutely do that. The township's kind of the last stop. So anybody can pay the engineering yourself, you just talk to the road commission, You work with them directly. The reason we get involved is there's two issues. If you do an SAD through the road commission, because you do have to have their permission to touch their stuff.
But it's our stuff.
Not the road.
Then why
Not
are we
the road.
buying a new one?
The road, because they're never going to fix our neighborhood roads.
Well, my question is, why can't we hire a third-party contractor to recap it? Not
You
replace
can work with them directly to see if they would be okay with that. I know at least the road commission owns the roads, and I know at least one place where that person happened to be one of the bidders that bids on all of our projects. So they know it's not like some guy who does driveways. That one we get a lot. Like, my friend does driveways. That is not the same as a road. Just so you know, don't let that person do your road. But they had somebody in their area where he owns an actual road paving company. He went on behalf of them. Now the issue is they have to collect all the money from everybody to do it. Without an SAD, your HOA president and your HOA board is responsible for collecting all that money. This is a lot of money to rely on a promise from people. That's why SADs exist. And you don't have to go through us for an SAD. The road commission does SADs.
section in our subdivision which is really nasty.
Uh-huh.
We would love to just recap that section. The rest of the roads aren't that bad, but we're being told, no, you can't.
Now-
Unless you go through the SAD and you do it all.
If yours are to a SAD level, which I believe yours was, Barry Barber was the one in charge of your SAD, yeah, yours are definitely some of the worst of the worst. An overlay, so when somebody gets to an SAD level like the Village, those were built in the 50s and 60s. They're road on top of a road on top of a road. They can't do an overlay. They have to get an SAD. But what you can do is we did just add almost $2 million into our overlay. If you're at an SAD level, you're usually way past an overlay because roads don't go bad from the top, they go bad from the bottom. By the time you're seeing it on the top to the level you see, there's not a lot of the substrate left. So reach out to DPW, ask them if you can be considered on our overlay improvement program that we just put $2 million into. They're going to be honest because they'll come and look. They'll say we're going to send somebody out, and they use the PACER. The PACER ratings are what the road commission does every 2 years. Your roads are looked at by the road commission on 1, 2, 3, 4 is kind of where they get rated. And as long as they're not in those high rated ones where it's saying this is way past, you can be on the list. And we now added $2 million into that. Now when I say $2 million sounds like a lot. For roads, that's approximately 3 miles out of 200 and some miles. So just realize, even if you don't get this year though, you're getting put on the list, and we were only able to do a half a mile or a mile because of the budget crisis that took away so much of our funding. Now that we're able to put money back and add more, we're going to be back, instead of a half a mile, we're doing 3 miles a year. So it may not be this year, but if your road is still possible to get that, they'll put you on the list for that.
Okay, can I contact the DPW?
Yes, yeah, because
Yes,
they
sir.
would be the roads, yeah.
I mean, it was a really curious question. The township owns the sanitary sewers.
Sanitary sewers, but not storm sewers.
Right.
Yes, yeah, and what we do is,
Say sewer.
yeah, there's 2 different sewers. That's confusing too. We own the stuff that comes out of your out of your bathrooms, or out of, all of the sanitary items that have to go to a treatment center. That we own, and some are actually Water Resource Commission if they're really large. Like in the Village, they have combined sewers, which was before we ever had a sewer. Those are owned by the county, and those are a system that we don't offer, because by the time we became a township with water and sewer, we knew you never combine storm sewers. So the Village is the county, but typically the sanitary sewers, the rest of the area is us. But storm sewers would be different. And what we do is, if we have an SAD going on, and we know your storm sewers have not been fixed within the last, meaning like lined, we go through and do preventative maintenance consistently within our system. We're sending cameras in to look at it, look for cracks, look for anywhere where they need to be lined so that you don't get as many water breaks. So if it has not been touched during the 10-year cycle, they'll go in and do it before, the year or so before, so that it's fixed before the roads get. Because why rip it up twice? So.
Any others?
So if you find damage in the system, the drainage systems, and you go in and fix it, who pays for that?
That's part of the water and sewer budget. So I know a lot of people are like, why do you have so many millions there? So the Long Lake project that we had to fix, because That one couldn't just be lined. Lined is, think of like angioplasty. You're putting a balloon in there and you blow it up and it sticks to the side. That's what lining is, and that helps a lot of it. There it was an actual breach because there was a belly where anywhere where you're near a lot of the watery areas, like a long lake, those were put on, they're like pylons to keep them. After about 50, 60 years, things have shifted. We realized there was a belly and a breach. So that had to be ripped out completely. And that's when the road commission said they would come in and finish. So we ripped it all out while they were doing the roads next. Just like right now at Square Lake, knowing that they were going to be ripping out the road, we knew there were a couple of problems there. We're doing our sanitary sewers first, and then they're putting the new road on top.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I get, I was say, you own it, it's your responsibility.
The sanitary sewer is. Sanitary sewer is not a storm sewer, though.
Okay.
Yeah, and so what you're probably thinking of, if it's the Barry Barber one, people want drainage, which is not a sanitary sewer. Sanitary sewer is like your bathroom waste.
Right.
When you flush it, it goes in. Storm sewers, when it rains, the water goes into a sewer.
Two separate things.
Totally separate, and they should be, or else you're stuck in the village where they're combined, and on every rain, they had sewage backup. So you never want to combine sewer. Luckily, we didn't start water sewer till later, so none of ours are combined. The only one the only combined system in this township is the village, which is owned by the county.
Right.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I've got a comment and a question.
Yeah.
The comment is, I'm the president of our HOA, so for some reason everybody thinks I'm the village constable, so I get complaints. And I've dealt with your ordinance enforcement group, and I want to say they do a fabulous job.
Oh, thank you.
That person, they do a great job.
And we did add some people because we had about 45,000 volunteer officers, is what I make a joke about. We may only have 3 paid. But
Retired.
Yes.
So
Right.
there's been some changes.
yeah. Chris Meyer started right after me.
Chris is
Yeah.
doing that. The question
Thank you.
I've got is, you were talking about the firefighters and the police officers, when they retire at 50, what are they don't have insurance before they get Medicare? So what is the solution?
So that's why until we can get out of our OPEB issue, which again was inherited, where people were paying their bare minimum of what they needed to pay out for that year, while it kept growing to a $164 million deficit. That's why when Rick Snyder changed the law to be 40% funded, they weren't doing anything wrong, but they had to start setting laws to force people to actually do the right business choice, which is fund it so that you're available. You have to be at 40% before you can add more into that OPEB system, which is retiree health care. So any new employees, which most of us, if we're not police and fire, we're not able to retire at 50, especially when you have a brand new mortgage at 52. But for them, any brand new employee, I'm competing against other communities that can offer retiree health care. So from 50 to 64, you're giving that gap for the public safety that we legally can't offer because we're under what's called a corrective action plan based on and this isn't to just one level back one, so you can't blame just the one supervisor before, the one before that. This has been going on since the 50s. So this is multiple supervisors making a conscious effort to kick that can. So I will say that under the last administration, they started to work on it and they started to fund it. So when we found out we were at 4, we didn't stay at 4. So they added some, and then we've done more than the minimum each year. The state requires that we put in 1.25 million, but each year we put anywhere from 2 to 3 million in it because we're trying to get there faster.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So given the current portfolio the township has, what fraction of that, of your obligations you have, depends upon the stock market performance, right?
Depends on the what?
I say
Stock market performance.
Yes.
The fraction of your obligation that the township has for these things, our ability to meet that depends very strongly upon how the township's invested. So, I mean, at one time the township was pushing toward more stock ownership, which means they have more volatility. We'll hit years where they can't meet that obligation.
Right.
Has any of that changed?
That has changed a lot under Michael. Michael for sure, and even under Brian, some of it, he started changing the investment structure. He added in a small amount, because also everything's volatile, even real estate's volatile, but having 5 to 10% of yours in real estate, not in New York, but in the growth markets like Colorado and Austin, Texas. And so first Brian kind of started that charge of, hey, we need to change the way things were done. Shouldn't all be stock market. And then he also did some things where the bonds were actually paying better than some of these, so he switched ours into the Oakland County bonds. Now that those aren't paying as well, investments are, we can move things around. So Michael has been working now, he's our new treasurer, that he's been working now on getting things kind of moved around and what's the best. So that did change under Brian and continues to change under Michael. And they watch it, and we never had policies. That was another thing. Although we had a AAA bond rating from both, we lost it from we go through S&P still. But Moody's, which we affectionately call them very Moody because they change their formula every year, but they actually are, they did not like that we didn't have policies written down. There was just best practices. So there was no investment policy. There was no budget policy, which again was part of the budget shortfall, was not thinking long term with human capital, with investments, with infrastructure. So changing the way we do that has changed that we have a surplus each year that we've been there. So I inherited a deficit and a pandemic and all of that, and we still were able to create a surplus that we now keep, again, tasking my department heads to think of something different. Everything used to just go into fund balance. If you have extra money at the end of the year, stick it in fund balance, but you have to be in a deficit to access that. Who wants the budget to fail? Nobody's going to send out your annual, okay, we're going to send out a deficit budget, so you have this fund balance that kept growing that nobody wanted to touch. And I was like, there has to be a better way. So Jason Tice, our finance director, and I, we found it's a legal account that's existed for years that nobody used, a capital improvement fund. So now we put millions of dollars into this fund instead of fund balance, so when we do get hit with any sort of infrastructure issue, we're not cutting services and cutting people to pay for surprises like Long Lake. That was a $2-point-some million surprise. We were able to pull that out of the capital improvement fund and nobody lost any services. The way it used to be done, oh my gosh, what services do we cut? So again, there was nothing nefarious done. It was just some older business practices that are way out of date, to the point where I went to school in the 90s and my information was still out of date. Imagine like nobody before me had ever gone to school even earlier than that. So that's why I went back. If somebody is your leader and they're not going back to update their business practices and update what they know, then they're not going to be giving you the best choices. So it was not fun to go back to school for 2 years, but it was definitely worth it. Shelley?
Yeah, I'm just curious, in driving around the township, I noticed that Horton or Big Beaver, Maple, Lone Pine, Square Lake, they look very nice, and for the most part, all the trash is gone. Long Lake Road, where nobody on this board lives along the Long Lake corridor, except me, and I'm not on your board. It is a pigsty.
Do you mean in the streets where we control, or like, for example, my HOA, we pick up along our street?
On the right-of-ways, there are dead animals. We lived with a skunk for 2 weeks, dead on the right-of-way.
You called that into the into our animal welfare and they wouldn't? Well, but that's how we find out. So this is perfect. You should never have to live with a dead animal.
Long Lake Road is a mess.
Okay.
There's all kinds of trash. It looks almost as bad as New York City, where your ankle keeping trash at times.
Whereabouts on Long Lake are you seeing that? So, because I'll send somebody out.
All clear through, almost to Woodward is not your jurisdiction.
I was going to say, if it's Bloomfield Hills,
No,
I can't touch it.
Clear to Lazar.
Okay.
By the shopping center at Long Lake and Telegraph, it's awful. There's
Okay.
stuff there, junk. There's just stuff left around along the road.
So that is something that our code enforcement exists for a reason. Those business people shouldn't be just throwing stuff out. They have, if trash flies out of their dumpsters, they have to pick it up. We don't.
But there's no code enforcement, between the West Bloomfield border and Telegraph, there's no businesses there, those are just homes.
No, thus as residents though, we do have to pick up, like I live on a main road. I have to pick up the trash that people throw out. It's disgusting some of the things they throw. But if I didn't, it's also my front yard.
Yeah,
So
but
what
that's
we do is we do street.
This is nobody's property. The homes are
Somebody
yours.
has that property. We contact, whether it looks vacant, it's never vacant. There's no vacant land.
Well, then-
We contact, for example, there was somebody along Telegraph that started clear cutting, and people thought it was us. We were like, no, that's somebody who wanted to build on an area that's not buildable. So the way we know things are happening is by you calling in. I won't know there's a dead skunk by your house. Neither will code enforcement animal control, till you say, hey, I have a dead skunk, can you come pick it up? That's what animal control is for. You should never have to live with any of that. If you do notice trash along the side, if it's in the road, we have street sweepers. So that's why I'm saying you have to contact the departments to say, I want some help. Bring your street sweeper out here and they'll do the streets. If it's the right of way or past it, they'll contact that homeowner or property owner and say, I get you might not live here, this might be an investment property, but you're going to get civil infractions if you don't start fixing this. That's what we should be helping you with, for sure.
I'm not sure what associations are in their stretch, but today we have 30 volunteers with the Square Lake Association, and we went all the way down Square Lake Road, even though it was raining. We went down all of our subdivision and we picked up things.
I don't know which subdivision it is, either. It's not mine.
Yeah, so whoever owns that area, hopefully they participated in Clean Sweep,
Sure.
or at least
Yeah.
try.
Right.
We did have quite a few sign up quickly, which
Yeah,
was nice.
we
That was
signed up and we had close to 40 volunteers.
That was
And it
the annual
really-
program that helped HOAs, where if you're going to go out and clean up the way we should, the township supplies for this weekend, each year, we're going to continue it again. We'll give you the bags, we'll give you the stuff, and then Priority knows there's going to be extra, so they're putting out more trucks for this week. But yeah, these are services that are available to you, but we don't know you have the need until you call in. But absolutely, we can fix those. Yeah.
So I do want to compliment the animal control department. They do a great job. You call them. We've had to pick up 2 dead deer.
Oh, okay.
They do a great job.
Yeah, they are, and that is a thankless job, I can tell you. That is not easy what they do with all day, but they are wonderful and they're quick. We also now have some ordinance on weekends and some animal control on weekends because we had, for example, a turkey that wasn't dead and survived. This was like a story from before me, and survived that whole weekend in this person's backyard. That is not pleasant. So what we do is if animal control is not available, we will send an officer out. They will go get it. They go out, they come back, they rechange, and they go on the road. So it's not a normal business practice that you want as your main animal control, but also you don't want a family dealing with a thriving animal in their backyard for 48 hours the way they used to. Yeah.
The animal control is back. A couple of years back, or 3 years back, we had called about, that was dying in our backyard. We don't do that anymore.
It is back. Yes, it is back. I do want to point out, some people get frustrated. Animal control is very different. What a police animal control is very different from like a humane society that finds kittens, rehabilitates them, because we are allowed to hold animals for 14 days, bless you, for 14 days. Animal control is meant for picking up dead animals. Animal control protects people from dangerous animals. Animal welfare agencies protect animals from dangerous people. So I just want to make sure like there's a delineation. So let's say you do have kittens. We wouldn't come pick those up, but we would help contact like Marl and the Humane Society and others to say, hey, we have a resident who has some kittens. So the only thing now you'll hear if we don't do that, but we'll affiliate, is if it's something about taking in a feral cat that needs to be socialized and adopted out. But yes, they will come and take raccoons and everything now too. Yeah. Yes?
I had a question kind of different from what we talked about, but Tom Ackerman, North South, Adams and Square Lake.
Yeah.
There's kind of house that's probably been under construction for like 4 years. It had an owner, he got more or less closed in, most of the metal roof on, and then decided he was selling. Ended up moving to Arizona, house sat there for a year and a half, I think. Recently had a buyer, probably last fall. Lease is finished up the roof, but nothing really much happening inside. It's all studs, bare minimum wiring and plumbing. Is there any way of moving that along or anything? I mean, it's just been sitting there in
Yeah.
unfinished state for a while.
Well, what we could do is figure out with our building department is what the status is. The one, again, I hate, Nick Soley always has to give bad news, and so do I sometimes, but the Michigan code does allow them up to 18 months between hammer throws.
Yeah.
So literally, somebody could do nothing for 17 months, 3 weeks and 6 days, go in there, and that resets them. But there are ways we can help speed things along.
I just figure it's probably somebody just had $1 million laying around, so they just parked it in his house and figure they'll make an investment out in a couple years and they sell it.
But-
Every now and then somebody will show up and you see a plumbing guy over there or something. But
We use some polite pressure, is what I call it. We use polite pressure where they get annoyed by us calling and saying, what's this week's? So we have part-timers that are there in the building department now where when they have finished their paperwork, they'll call on some of these and say, what's the status? And boy, does that annoy them enough that they start to step up. Polite pressure is my term.
for that then?
The building department would be that, yeah. And actually, Chris Fox is the name of the building official. He oversees everything that happens on the building end.
I want more.
Yeah.
For the past 4 or 5 years, we've had an automobile repair shop in our community. We have a man who owns a home. He has 12 to 15 cars parked out there all the time.
Okay.
Claims he's fixing them for his relatives. When you go home on Thursday night, he starts in on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now he's fixing a big, huge truck in his garage. He allowed him to expand his garage. It was a 2.5-car garage. And that's what goes on all weekend into the night. And I've had ordinance people out there maybe 30 or 40 times. The neighbors can't stand it. It's a pigsty. There's building material, but he hasn't finished his garage, but he's using it. And
Okay.
so it's all spread across the lawn. I don't think this is a way, and there's no ordinance that says you can't do this, because the ordinance says every car must be drivable.
That's the state, right? We follow this.
Must have a license, current license. Well, some of them don't, but he backs them in so you can't see the tags.
Okay.
So, my neighborhood has been screaming both to Westfield, it's in Bloomfield Township, over half and half. This has been going on for over 5 years, and all of your ordinance people put their hands up to the patty and say there's nothing we can do about it. Well, there is something you can do. You can change the ordinance so that the cars have, we're not complaining if you got a teenager in the house, or 2 of them, got extra cars in the driveway because you have a 2-car garage. We're not saying that. We're not saying that grandma comes to visit, or Uncle Bill or something. We're telling you this is 24/7, 2 people in the house, they each have 1 car. The rest of the cars are there for repair when they get around to it. On top of it, there's machinery out, there's a shed that was built at Dan's house that looks crappy. Things that are not permitted at all, and we have no control over it, and your ordinances do not speak to it. And your ordinance officer has even gone to a conference to see what people have in their other, in other townships.
Right.
And nobody has anything different than Bloomfield does. But I think, sadly, it's sad to say that you have to write an ordinance for a single incident. But this is totally unsightly. I dare you to go and take a look at it. I'll give you the address privately. It is not acceptable in Bloomfield Township, okay?
So I will go back again. I was involved a couple years ago when, so the reason no township has anything is, again, back to what the state allows us to do. We are not allowed to write any ordinance that is stricter than what the state allows. For example, we used to have no fireworks that we were going towards. You have to allow it on the exact dates that are allowed by the state.
Well,
The
that's
state
not how-
allows...
We can change the state law.
In a city, right, yes, we could work with state representatives. We have some that are a little more active than previously, where they are going on our behalf to fight in Lansing. Right now, we're also fighting a noise ordinance with Natalie. Price is one of ours. The others wouldn't take it on because a lot of them get money from the automotive industry, but Natalie is helping us take it on. having state legislators help change what townships can do is absolutely the key. But what we can do in the meantime, the time I went out with them, and all of them were licensed, and the state says if it's licensed, it's allowed. But I'll go back out again and see and make him pull them out. If he's got some hiding in there, we will make them pull them out and get rid of the ones that are not licensed.
As far as I know, it's not the state that says it, it's the township.
A township cannot do anything the state doesn't allow it to do. If the state says anybody can have licensed vehicles in their garages and work on licensed vehicles in their garages, we can't change it.
The state doesn't say that. The state says it's a hobby. This is not a hobby.
So we need proof that it's not a hobby. So you and I can work together. We'll have Chris Myers, you and I, we'll go out there together. We'll figure out, but what I saw a couple years ago, the state considered a hobby because we even sent it up to them and saying, how can you call this a hobby? So, because he doesn't have commercial, he isn't doing contracts too. Some of these people know, like there was somebody who just hired a person who's not a licensed builder in the village to fix her house. He had his friend, who is a licensed builder, pull permits. When he did bad work, and we reached out to the permit person, found out that that isn't the builder she chose, that's a civil lawsuit. That person's upset with me and the police for not getting involved on her signing a bad contract. But there are things that are out of my jurisdiction. So changing the state law, I can't change. But if we can find proof of business, if we can find proof of that, or any that are not registered and not licensed, we can do that. If they're...
You can't go on his property without a warrant, okay? Well, I've been through this with the police department. They can't go on the property without a warrant. So he backs his cars in, and you can't see whether the sticker's orange, purple, green, or red, whatever the color is for the year, okay? So you can't see it at all.
So I'll work with them to see what the police have said of what our next step would be then. Because if they're saying we can't do it, there's somebody at the state that can. I'll find out if I'll talk to Jimmy Gallagher and see, is he saying our team can't do it because the state police is saying it and we'll go to them? If they're saying it's a state, I just need to know who to go to.
No, you can't go on somebody's property without their permission.
The
And
DNR
police
can. If we can find, I'm not sure people know about this, but the DNR can go onto your property and seize your property with no warrant. There are state agencies. So if we can find something to allow certain state agencies, that's why I call it polite pressure. I'm not doing anything illegal, but there was somebody with a hunter that was causing trouble, and the DNR could go into his property, but my police could not. So if I can learn more about what's changed from 2 years ago when I was originally pulled in to now.
more cars.
Okay.
There's a bigger garage, and now you can work on 3 cars instead of 1 car.
So he went to the ZBA and those residents gave him approval? Or
It doesn't have to be.
a ZBA. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the residents that serve. So you're saying he got a bigger garage?
Should he be doing business as?
No, Zoning Board of Appeals is where you go to expand your garage. Again, that's 6 residents that sit on the Zoning Board of Appeals and 1 trustee. Did he go there?
He's got a township permit, building permit, from
So,
the
yeah.
township to expand his garage.
My guess is that the ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, probably approved that to get it out of the yard so that you wouldn't have to see it. I'm guessing if the residents approved that, because those are a residential body, that might have been they approved it so that you weren't looking at it in your front yard. But again, you did not reach out to me, and I'm glad you are now. Chris Meyer actually, I think it was Brian Keeps, because Brian showed me some information, which, just so you know, if you're having trouble with any department other than Treasury is Michael Shostak, Clerks is Martin Brook, any other department that you have need help with, I run all the 11 others. So Brian did let me know what was going on, and I went ahead and checked with Chris, and at that time, all those were licensed. I did not know it was still going on. I hadn't reached out. Well, I wish, you know how to get a hold of me, so please, now we'll get together. We're even on Facebook together. You could have gotten all right, so we will work on that together.
Well, thank you, Dani. It's been a very informative morning for everybody. I want to thank everybody who came out today. I'd also like to thank Christine Trevorrow of the Senior Center and Steve Rhoda, who's doing the video presentation today. United Homeowners has provided sandwiches. We have turkey, ham, and vegan. Please grab a sandwich, either have it here or take it home. And
May I add one last thing?
yes,
For the strategic plan, we just signed the contract with that. That will be starting. We're going to be reaching out to HOAs. The hardest thing in this township is to get engagement while you can make changes instead of after. So I am begging you as HOA leaders, help encourage when we do reach out to HOAs and say, hey, there's these focus groups, there's this open house. Please get people to show up and give us their opinions as we go through the 7-month process of what we as a township see our township going forward. Because sometimes if people aren't involved, we have to make assumptions. So I really want your opinions there. Please show up and do whatever you can to get people to come. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.